This Cobra was built to win autocross races and as a test bed for the new 54-inch G-Comp front suspension. So not only has this car proven the viability of this 54-inch G-Comp, but it's also proven that it can win. And this is Bill Schneider from Team Speedway, and you guys have basically, it's been a year since you put this car on the track for the first time. What have you done in that year?
Well, a year ago was in Des Moines, and we went out just to make sure it wouldn't blow up, basically, check some of our settings. We competed with the 70, that event. The second event, we took it out to SCCA. We thought we had it somewhat better, and we made the shootout, obviously. But then after that, we found a couple big items, and we then the past two Good Guys events, one the fall of last year, the spring of this year, and then LS Fest, we managed to get P1 in vintage LS Fest. So we've been pretty successful.
So how did this car come about in the first place?
Well, Speedway, just in general on their G-Comp line, needed a narrower version just to fill a void there with some smaller cars and or kit cars that would be a little better hub to hub as far as fitting tires underneath the bodies. So we happen to know where there was a Cobra body, and nobody knows or will admit whose brand it is. We got that out of a storage unit and commenced to straighten it out, do enough body work so we could use it as an autocross car, because obviously if we were going to come up with a 54-inch width track width, we're going to have some kind of testing and make sure that all the normal G-Comp suspension adjustments are something that we can achieve, and also cycle test the thing out on the track, so it's good for the customer.
And this 54-inch track width now that you guys have kind of proven out, you know, that really opens the door for what these universal G-Comp front suspensions will fit. 54-inch, very narrow, car like this, car like a Corvair, it will fit under one of those. And then those universal G-Comps go all the way out to 62-inch track width, so it'll fit a Cadillac, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, and that was the void we had. We couldn't get in anything narrow. We've obviously been testing it in the past year and had fairly good success.
Obviously, this is a track-oriented car. What are some of the advantages, specifically in autocross, to having a narrow track width like this?
The narrow track width also goes along with basically length, right? This particular car and Carroll Shelby's version of it had a 90-inch wheelbase. Our typical G-Comp, as sitting right now, the Camaro is at 108. So at agility, the tracks are getting smaller, right? Agility is very important in these smaller tracks. Tighter turns, and basically it gets around the track better. But number one, it's a game of not hitting cones. So if you got a wide car, you're just closer to the cones. And if you make an error or hit the marbles or whatever happens to you that you weren't expecting, that's a 2-second penalty at most tracks. Narrower track width will allow you to make an error without having a catastrophic event happen on that run.
It also allows you to choose the best line, whereas if you have a wide car, you kind of only have one way through. With a narrow car, you get to choose the line that's going to get you around the fastest, right?
Absolutely. You know, it's in fact very important. Now that you would mention that, I go back to a calculation I did once. If you took that width and divided it in half and said that was the center line in your car, and you went around a 10-foot circle versus a 10-foot 4 circle, and you had 20 turns on your course, you would extend your track length by 10 feet. Now, at that point in time, you have to make up 10 feet of distance in time, and we've easily been beaten and have beaten people with that time interval. So that's why it's kind of important, just in every turn, not to mention the width. Going through a slalom, your car doesn't have to shift as far if it's narrow. That saves you time. The one thing you have to know on autocross and starting out in it is the shortest distance to keep the track as short as you can is a straight line from cone to cone, and any deviation from that, you're just adding to the track length, and reducing your ability to post a good time, a competitive time. The good guys are on that with GPS positioning or whatever.
So this narrow 54-inch G-Comp, does it sacrifice anything in the way of suspension travel when compared to the wider G-Comps?
No, it's virtually identical to what we've had in the past, especially for up and down, lowering your car. If you want to lower your car, you're able to do that. This has got an adjustable shock mount. We have two versions. We have a version that doesn't have that, it's got a shock tower. But this one, obviously, we could adjust that. That's basically how long your shock body is, so you don't bottom out. The caster camber, we've used all of the casters so far, and it's kind of an interesting eye-opener for us as far as caster and autocross. You really can't necessarily use that on a road course. But everything else as far as ride height, caster camber, toe in, toe out, is all identical to normal G-Comp suspension.
And that's something where, you talk about different ways that you can arrive at a front suspension that would lower the car. And what a lot of times people are doing is modifying something that's already there. You're sort of beholden to the pickup points on a Mustang 2, and you're trying to lower it by using drop spindles and cutting coil springs and narrowing control arms if you want a narrower track width. And when you do that, you're messing with the geometry and you're making sacrifices. You're sacrificing ride quality, you're sacrificing suspension travel, you're sacrificing geometry. And something like this, where it's all engineered to fit into this package, doesn't make any sacrifices.
Absolutely, and I think from a perspective of your average guy that wants to go out and autocross, it's got more than enough travel. It's like you were saying in Mustang too, the minute you start lowering the ride height and you get different attack angles on your control arms, and you get bump steer because you've lowered the car past the point of no return, and you created bump steer, if you will, depending, which needs to be checked. If you're going to go out there and autocross something with a Mustang 2, for instance, you're way better off with a G-Comp. It compensates for any fine-tuning.
You mentioned that the prototype suspension in this car has an adjustable upper shock mount. And here is a production version of this 54-inch G-Comp. And I wanted to look at this to see what this looks like. There are actually two versions of this. There's a version that does not have the adjustable upper shock mount, and then this version which does. What does this give you?
Well, that should theoretically be your major adjustment point when you initially set up the car. And primarily what that's for is to mate up to your shocks, right?
It allows you to run different length shocks.
Right, so the last thing you need is to run out of travel and you bottom out the suspension on the shock. So that initially, unless you get some gross adjustment you want to make, ordinarily your ride height would be set with your coilovers, your ride height on your spring setting. But that is there to get you within range.
This just gives you a bigger tuning window, which is especially advantageous in a car like this, where you can use it sometimes.
And especially if you find that you put aero on your car and you have more compression than you think you did, because your car at speed doesn't weigh it weighs more than it did, obviously, when it was just statically sitting there. So then if you find that you're almost bottoming out at that point in time, you can raise your shock up a little bit and compensate for that and gain extra room.
So this has come up a couple times, but a 54-inch track width makes this a really great alternative to a Mustang 2. What are some of the ways in which a G-Comp is better than a Mustang 2?
Well, I'd say the first thing you'd have to consider is range of motion for your shocks, for instance. We really don't know how much height you're going to require in the car. A Mustang 2, I don't believe, I'm going to say less than 2 inches of vertical adjustment range, down or up. And this one is far better. And then it can compensate for that change, right? You're able to get to the adjustment that you need to get to if you need to adjust it that far. Second of all would definitely be the strength of it. I mean, what we're running for hubs and running for spindles isn't even close visually. Anybody can see that this is a much more rigid setup. The tubular control arms are better. Everything about this structurally, strength-wise, is far superior to the Mustang 2. So if you're on a heavy car, for instance, even if you're not out there autocrossing it, and you tried to do that and put it on a 34 Ford or whatever, a full fendered car, it's going to be pretty heavy. This will handle it. Mustang 2 is marginal.
And a Mustang 2 geometry is from the 70s, right? Like a lot of things have changed since the 70s, especially tires and tire technology.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So what are some of the geometry aspects that make this better?
Well, we can go right back to all the adjustments it's got. It's kind of like the standard features that it would have. A Mustang 2 is going to get to 10 degrees of caster, right? And it doesn't have any adjustability on anything to that range that you need to put wider tires on it, or even radial tires. So, you know, from a Mustang, at this point in time, if I was personally going to go to any kind of Mustang 2 size, hub to hub, it's 54, which is what approximately Mustang 2 is, you would be nuts for the amount of work it takes to put a front end on like that. You would definitely go with this. Stronger, without question.
You talk about Mustang 2, a lot of times where my mind goes is you're thinking of a 48 Ford, where you're changing out the solid axle front and retrofitting a Mustang 2. That's been the answer for years. What are some other applications where maybe this would work really well?
The Kate cars, I think, would be very strong. I'm on a lot of forums for Cobras, and obviously Daytonas are in there. Any type of, maybe a Lamborghini Kate car. Let's go with that. Something that is a higher performance. There were so many Cobras built in the 60s and 70s, hundreds of kits out there, and most of them used the Mustang too. So that's definitely a spot.
I mean, overall, this is just such a cool example of Team Speedway putting a car on the track to prove out a prototype product that then trickles down and turns into an actual product that our customers can buy. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, everybody, for watching.